All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last live stream of this month of July, July 26th. For this week's live stream, we do have a guest from the Twitterverse. So, the topic, as you see in the description, we're going to be talking about the Big Bang Theory. And our guest is Terry. But let's start. So, Terry, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. You may have seen some of the previous videos just to prep, but we can just give you a quick introduction and then you can introduce yourself. And then, as I mentioned, I'll go over the Twitter discussion that precipitated this. So, you can just call me QC. This platform I have is something that I had started just as a platform. So we can have a civil discussion about different topics. And for the most part, the guests we've had been pretty good and we've had some good discussions. But it is a way that I kind of found as taking some of the online discussions, which, as I have in my Twitter profile, things can be kind of salty. But when we have a real discussion, at least a voice-to-voice discussion, I think the tenor of the discussion changes. So that's the um, rationale for me having this channel. It's not here to gather thousands of views or anything like that, but it's really for our benefit, for people who are interested in having that discussion. I have a background in philosophy as well as within sciences. I have done actual lab research in the biological sciences, in molecular biology, and I have an undergrad degree in philosophy. But I'm not in the philosophy field, so I haven't, quote unquote, used philosophy since leaving school. Uh, and that being said, let me send it to John. John, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi there, my name is John. Been one of the people that on this channel. I don't know from day one or pretty close to it. Anyway, my background is in a little bit of mathematics, a lot of marketing, client relations, sales, a little bit of philosophy, although not nearly on any kind of real academic structure. But been an atheist for the entirety of my adult life. I have been a doubter since I was a small child. And really, one of the things that I really enjoy about being on this channel is the opportunity to actually have conversations with people that, on a fundamental level, disagree with me, because it gives me a chance to ask some of the questions that I have in my head, and it gives me an opportunity to speak with folks that have a different perspective. And one of the things that I believe very deeply is that whether or not we agree, we can disagree without being disagreeable. I know that not always my participation here on this channel reflects that necessarily, but at my core, hearing from people in a different point of view is something that I find highly valuable. So I'm very much looking forward to tonight's conversation. Thank you.
And next, why don't we go to Neil? And FYI, Ook, I know you're on stage. I'm going to drop down John, and you can come up. And since he's done with his intro, you can come up and introduce yourself as well.
What are we doing today? I have no fucking idea.
You didn't even read the email?
I opened it about 5 minutes ago and went, they'll tell me what to do when I get online.
Okay.
I had a bad day.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. The weird thing is I'm allergic to THC in smoke form. My throat closes up. I have to get a puffer, and it's like I'm dying of that. I can take it in liquid form and everything, but I've got to take steroids if someone's smoking it around me. And my next door neighbours is a bonging on. And if I could have caught my breath yesterday, I would have done some serious damage to their car. But because I could hardly breathe, Yeah, I let's just say that I've informed the police, and tomorrow I'm going to the landlord and have words with him because they say, "Oh no, we're not smoking. I can see it coming out the bottom of your garage. Don't lie to me. You're lying to me." So yeah, I spent most of the day trying to breathe yesterday, so I'm not real compos mentis. So I'll generally be nice today. How's that?
Okay. Well, you can kind of sit back and listen in, and I'll put you down, and not put you down in a bad way, but put you back on
Yeah,
stage, and I'll bring up John.
yeah.
uh,
And if that where is he? I can't see him. Oh, there he is. Blarg. I've got a photo to show Blarg. We'll wait for later. I threatened him. I told him I'd do it.
Well, I
Okay.
don't think we need that.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that one.
So Ook, I'll put you back down on stage, but if you have anything you want to say, just ping me on the private chat, and I'll pull you up.
Easy done, mate.
Yeah, you can switch me out with him if you need to.
All right.
Yep.
Next fight.
See ya.
Okay. All right, Steve-O, why don't you go ahead and with your introduction?
Yeah, my name's Steve. I prefer to call you Steve over here. Have a background in sociology, but I never finished college because of financial issues. So pretty much that's it. And I'm pretty much the just the idiot that likes to hang around with the rest of the guys. That's
All right.
about it, pretty much in a short form.
Okay, and then we'll have Neil, if you want to go ahead.
Yep. Hello. I'm Neil from the UK, as you may hear. And I like to joke that I'm the token theist on the panel, but as an agnostic pantheist, I am kind of considered atheist adjacent, I would say. At least to the other theists on the other channels who hate my guts.
You barely make the grade of theist.
Yeah. It's funny.
And you do have some science background, right?
Oh yes, no, I'm definitely trained in chemistry, but I know sort of basics of physics and biology and all manner of science stuff, as we say.
And then last and definitely not least, our resident physicist, who will probably have a lot to contribute to this discussion. Blarg, please introduce yourself.
G'day all. Blarg, I'm the other Aussie in the group. Well, you probably shouldn't call me a physicist per se, though I do have a degree in physics. I also have a degree in electrical engineering, which is where I spent most of my working life doing that, not physics. So, but yes, background in physics, background in engineering, lifelong atheist. So that's me.
All right. Okay. So, and for Terry, you and I kind of butted heads a little bit on Twitter, and you had mentioned that you have a physics background, and I presume you are a Christian. Is that correct?
Oh yes, that's correct. I'm studying physics and I'm a Christian, so I'm probably the outlier of the group.
Where are you studying physics in? Oh, so this is an undergrad? I guess that's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah, I'm studying undergrad right now. I don't have a degree quite yet.
Okay, but you're majoring in physics?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, interesting. What led you to physics, and what's your kind of hope with that degree?
Oh, well, I've always kind of been drawn to understanding how things work at a fundamental level, I guess. So it kind of makes sense that physics would be right up my alley. I was originally really interested in chemistry, and that was very, very interesting. But I think physics is a little bit more of my speed when it comes to getting into the nitty gritty, especially when it comes to theoretical physics. It's very, very interesting to me and fulfilling to do. To be honest, I still haven't settled on one single thing that I would like to do, but I definitely would like to do some engineering prospects with my father, who is a engineer, and getting a physics degree will definitely be very helpful on that track.
And it sounds like you are an American.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Steve, Will, John, and myself were all from the U.S. as well.
So, Terry,
Very nice to meet you all.
very nice to meet you. It sounds like for you, physics has mass appeal.
Yeah, you could say that.
Well, I was going to tell a chemistry joke, but I didn't know if I would get a reaction out of him.
Just assume
That's
anytime
my
John
teacher.
opens his mouth.
Yeah, whenever he
waffles
opens
about
his-
coming out.
Whenever he opens his mouth, be ready for a lay back pun.
I promise. All joking aside, I'm mostly harmless. I promise.
And I'm a little bit curious here on the physics side. Do you feel that physics has helped with your faith, or has it brought on questions?
Yeah, personally, I do think that physics has helped strengthen and grow my faith as a Christian. Mainly just because, to me, it seems like a very, very Christian idea that the world would be, in the universe, would be fine-tuned. And so the idea that there are laws and such that exist that we can use to actually predict things to happen in the future, that speaks to me of a creator. But of course, that's just me personally.
And how far along are you in your studies? Like, have you had a lot of advanced physics?
Not in my studies quite yet, no. I do study a lot of theoretical physics kind of on the side, but my main bulk of my physics education so far has been focused on the physical and classical examples and models of physics.
All right, that's fair. So then, without further ado, let me go ahead and share the screen for the discussion that kind of started this. And the original post was from Lee Strobel, where he was looking through a telescope and using that to say, that the idea of the Big Bang supports Genesis 1:1, that in the beginning God created heaven and the earth. Although I don't know if you've heard this kind of interpretation of Genesis 1:1, but most modern translations are starting to use the term when God began to create the heavens and earth. So it's Genesis 1:1 isn't about the beginning of the universe, time, and all that. It's about the beginning of the creation process, where God starts putting order into chaos, into the waters of chaos. And that aligns with a lot of creation stories, where it really is about a deity bringing in order into a universe. So with Lee Strobel's comment there, which he later deleted, I don't know why, I had responded and said that the Big Bang Theory itself doesn't say that universe had a beginning. It only says that the universe began to expand about some 14 billion years ago. And this is where you popped in and said I was blatantly demonstrating I have no idea what I'm talking about. And for that, I guess this is from maybe Google AI. Yes, the Big Bang Theory states that the universe began approximately 13.8 billion years ago from an extremely hot and dense point, which then expanded, etc. So this is my contention with this is as kind of a colloquial use of the term began, that when it says universe began. And so that's how I explained it. And I said that, so what that really says is that the expansion of the universe began at the time. It doesn't say that the highly dense energetic state originated at that time. and this is where you then responded and gave this space.com article, where again, it obviously, yes, Big Bang Theory stands as the most widely accepted explanation for the origin of the universe. The universe began as an infinitely small, hot, and dense point. So again, it says from the beginning point of infinitely small, hot, and dense point, but it really doesn't say where and when that dense point started. And I think when I started kind of trying to make my point, I think you're fair in saying, okay, I see. The point you are making is that the theory doesn't explicitly address the origin of the initial singularity, and that's true. But your point is that the mainstream, or you're testing that the mainstream cosmology view is that the universe as we know it began at the Big Bang with no measurable time prior. Which the Big Bang really doesn't say that. And you talk about general relativity, suggesting that T equals 0. And that's true. If you, did it reset? This is what happens when sorry, I think this is, okay, here it is. So this is where you brought in T equals 0. And this makes sense when we talk about classical physics, meaning Einstein general relativity says you can extrapolate back into T equals 0. But this is with the biggest caveat assumption that classical physics goes all the way back to T equals 0, where it's an undefined point, right? T equals 0, the singularity isn't some thing. It's from a mathematical point of view, just an undefined point. And we really don't know anything about it. We don't know what happens prior to the Planck time. And so I'm not sure if it makes sense to keep going. I think we can just kind of hand off into the discussion. So let me just first kind of, I don't know, Blarg, if you've had a chance to read through this thread. Did you have anything specific you wanted to first bring up before we hand it over to David?
Yeah, I'm not on X, so that severely limits my ability to read through the thread. But I see the what's going on there in the discussion. One of the problems with with this sort of rebuttal is that it's essentially it's pop sci, as I put in the comments, that it's a little bit like you get half the story. It's close enough to correct, but the devil's in the details. So it's exactly right. There is no certainty about what happened. What's that dot? What's that origin? And nothing in the Big Bang Theory talks about where that came from, what it is, or any more information about that. So by going and saying this is the beginning of all is just patently wrong. It's just the best we can look at this time. Further, and I did see in the email some mention indirectly of Penrose-Hawking singularity theorem, which does go and draw to a point to say that is the point at which everything began. In mathematically, it's quite similar, if you think about it, to the way in which lines of longitude, you can trace space-time lines back to a singular point in that theorem, the same way you can trace lines of longitude to a single point. Actually, just ignore the southern hemisphere for the minute. Just if you look at the northern hemisphere of the globe, you can trace them to a single point at the North Pole. And then to ask what is north of that point doesn't make any sense, in the same way as what is before the Big Bang doesn't make any sense. Except the problem with that is that the theorem breaks down at that point because it's based upon general relativity, and general relativity is known to not describe what happens at the small scale. So essentially what happens at that point is you get to a divide by zero error, which is always a good indication in physics that you've done something wrong, or that's something about the methodology or the theory or the mathematics that you're using isn't correct. So yeah, I'll leave it at that, and then we'll see where we go from here.
Yeah. So Terry, you want to go by Terry, right? Not David.
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. So Terry, yeah. So based on kind of then that.
Yeah, am I allowed to
And
respond
I
to
have,
some of that?
yeah, and I have your kind of rebuttal, so to speak, up on the screen. So why don't you then kind of give us your viewpoint?
Yeah, sure. So I just kind of want to clear up a few things, like to begin with. Like I state in this comment that you have on screen, like you were actually kind of the one that brought up the specific Big Bang model constraints. Even the original post by Lee Strobel wasn't strictly specifically talking about the Big Bang model. Like he never said the words Big Bang even in the post. And so the original point that I was making with the first sentence there is just simply that you were putting this kind of constraint on it, and I don't know why, because you are putting, it seems like you're putting this constraint on it because of the fact that we cannot probe past the Planck time, or prior to the Planck time. And so by doing that, you kind of give yourself like a little bit of a logical gate out of saying, well, we don't know what happened at t=0 exactly, so therefore we can't say for any certainty that there was a beginning point for the universe. And
well, so first of all, the comment that you responded to, my comment that you responded to, specifically called out the Big Bang theory, right? And so you're
Correct.
responding to that, and
Correct.
you actually rebutted the Big Bang theory, right? You brought up and said, hey, the Big Bang theory is well established, et cetera, et cetera. So you were engaged in the discussion about the Big Bang theory right from your first response.
You're not wrong, yes, because
Okay.
I was trying to also correct the inaccuracy of the statement, because it is still inaccurate to say that the Big Bang theory says nothing about the universe having a beginning. You are correct that it doesn't 100% explicitly describe what happens during and right after time=0, but the idea that it doesn't have any implications for the universe having a beginning is just false. Like even the most, atheistic secular scientists will tell you that the universe had a beginning, and
I don't
that's
think
not
that's true.
because, well, it is true. Like
Well, so that's where
It's
Well, so let me
it's
just again,
not.
because I think you acknowledge this, that
Mhm.
what I'm talking about isn't the beginning of everything coming into being. When I say Big Bang, I'm saying that the Big Bang says when the beginning of the expansion started from a pre-existing, mass of
Right.
high energy.
Right. And so I think that stems from a common misconception about the Big Bang, because you are correct that it does describe a hot initial state of infinite density. But what it also describes is that at the onset of the expansion at time=0, that also coincides with the creation of space-time itself, which
No,
means that
not at
marks.
not at t=0. It's talking
You
about
can't
at
get
Planck
to
time.
t=0. Sorry, but you just can't get to t=0 with the Big Bang theory. We don't have any mechanism to get there, and general relativity can't get us there, as I described earlier. General relativity cannot probe those small scales.
Actually,
So,
can I jump in, because I've got a couple of questions that I've got that in terms of my basic understanding of the conversation. Do you mind if I kind of hop in real quick?
Go ahead.
So
Before you start, hello, Redefine Apologetics. Welcome.
Okay, so Terry, my understanding, and again, I'll be very clear that I do not have a background in physics, certainly not at your level. So I really am genuinely asking from a place of trying to understand common vocabulary. My understanding has always been that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It only changes form. Am I wrong on that level?
Yeah, yeah, correct.
Yeah, you are wrong.
All right, and there's nothing in the universe that isn't made out of the energy that was existent at the point of the big bang. That's again,
that
that's sort
also
of an
seems wrong.
understanding that I have. So if I'm incorrect on that, please tell me.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah. So the universe is made out of energy in some form or another.
Right.
Solid matter is just a reconfiguration of
And
that.
so you're saying, like, how did that come into existence if energy cannot be created or destroyed?
No, my question is, if energy can never be created or destroyed, but only change forms, then that means that the singularity prior to the existence of the Big Bang was always there. And so on that level, there's no such thing as, I mean, definitionally, there can't be such a thing as beginning of the universe. It's just the universe was this form, and then it was another form. But it was always there.
No, that's not exactly correct because of things that we know about our current universe, mainly that it's still expanding right now. And so, and on top of that, the Big Bang model itself, the expansion that it predicts from, time equals zero onward, that doesn't really allow for a constant state of steady, super dense, infinitely dense universe. And then, at some point it just, decided to expand all of a sudden.
Well,
That's kind of why Penrose kind of helped develop an alternative theory that still, hasn't been tested or anything. But
right.
The alternative theory is basically a cyclical kind of universe that like bounces off of each other, off of itself. And so it contracts and it's really dense at one point, and then it expands again. And then, at some point, gravity takes over from dark matter,
right,
brings it back in again.
But again, gravity as a field is again sort of the energy being shuffled around. I guess, and maybe this is just ignorance on my part, but if there's no new energy that's been added to the universe,
that's not doesn't appear to be correct.
Okay,
we've got a couple of things of note. So
where does the new energy come from? I guess is my question.
Well, the fact is that energy is not a conserved quantity in changing space-time. So
in our
when space-time changes, it's not what's called reverse. It's not a reversible state, so you can't or sort of independent of time. So Noether's theory says wherever you've essentially got this reversibility, you have a conserved quantity. In gravitationally bound space-time, that is true. So, and in really short time frames, that is true. So, in a chemistry lab, in a physics lab, where you're doing studies, that is essentially true, that energy is conserved. But in the universe as a whole, that's not the case. So, as the universe has expanded. So, for example, if we look at the photons of the CMBR, they began their life as a black body spectrum at 3000 Kelvin, thereabouts, and now they're 2.7 Kelvin. So those photons themselves have lost energy. So that temperature is a measure of their energy. So that they've lost over 99% of their energy over the 13 billion year journey. It hasn't gone anywhere per se. It just doesn't exist.
But isn't that just potential energy?
No. Well, no.
No.
Yeah. Again,
it's always complicated. So it's always complicated. There's always more than one way to look at things in the world of physics, and it's why whenever you get people making simplistic hot takes, they generally don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
So
isn't it commonly called like the energy momentum tensor or something?
Yeah, and even then, that doesn't quite cover things as well. And we also haven't come to terms with where the what dark energy is. So, you know,
Right.
something
Yeah.
more than 60% of the universe's total energy seems to be energy which comes into existence at a constant energy density. So,
Yeah.
as the universe, this is coming into existence. So, where's it coming from? Not a clue.
No one knows.
And but I guess, and maybe this will go. Maybe this is something that you're prepared to talk to a little bit further down the road, Terry. And if so, then tell me to shut up, and I'll sit in the corner and I'll be quiet. I promise. But to date, anytime that we've engaged in a scientific inquiry about the nature of something, the end result seems to consistently be that we come up with a naturalistic explanation for things, rather than a supernatural or deity explanation. So I guess my biggest concern, my biggest problem with the idea of intelligent design for the universe is that there's simply no precedent for it, and everything seems to fall into this general framework of explanation. And the stuff that we don't know, and there's plenty that we don't. But if you want to put God in as the explanation, or a deity in as the explanation, or intelligent designer as the explanation, then wouldn't there need to be a framework for determining what was intelligently designed and what's naturally happening without that intelligent designer?
Well, so I think I'm totally down to talk about this later if you want to, but I can kind of give you my 2 cents on that. It's just
what's the elevator pitch?
I think there's a distinction between what you're kind of calling science and what science has been throughout history, in that a lot of modern science is based on fundamental materialism or naturalism. And that's, the kind of logic behind it is that, let's find a naturalistic explanation to why, the lightning strikes, and, why the planets go around the sun and stuff like that. But
I would actually object to that. Science isn't explicitly trying to find a naturalistic explanation. It's just trying to find explanation that matches the data and the observation. And the observation we have is materialistic only because we haven't seen anything supernatural.
So I guess I would add into there that you don't make assumptions that you can't back up. Like, you don't assume an agency unless an agency is demonstrated. That's why you fall back on things like naturalism and materialism, is because unless you can show something exists, you don't assume it exists.
Right. So, and I guess my question, Terry, to respond to your observation or your depiction of science, in terms of it assuming materialism, even if we accept that premise, can we point to an example where that assumption was wrong, proven to be wrong?
I don't think that's the same argument that I'm making at all. The whole point that I was trying to get to is that there is a huge difference between the argument of, oh, we don't know, therefore God, and that's like a limitation on science. And then there's a huge difference between that and saying, we know these things from science, therefore the best explanation is God. And that's kind of, especially with like the intelligent design argument, that's especially the distinction that's made there, is that it is not like a God of the gaps idea that, oh, we have no idea how this could have happened, therefore, we must imply that some supernatural force did it. But what it is saying is that we do know that there is only one origin for coded languages, and its intelligence. And that is the argument. And so you can disagree with the argument if you
want. How do you determine that something is coded?
By its information content and like how it's used as well. And so
how are you defining information?
Information in the genetic case would be the
information in general. How are you defining information
in general?
Yeah, because that's what you're arguing here,
No,
is
I'm
that
saying
information is inherent.
I'm saying that the ordered coded language information that we find in things like the English language or ancient hieroglyphs or DNA only have one known origin:
DNA.
intelligence.
Hold on. So Terry, what's pareidolia?
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Okay, it's the psychological tendency for the human mind to find patterns, whether or not that.
Oh, I did know that. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you rule out pareidolia?
What do you mean? How does this apply to?
You're talking about information encoded, and what I see over and over again is if we look for patterns, we find patterns, but that doesn't mean that it was a pattern. It doesn't mean that it was consciously or deliberately constructed.
Oh no, you're right. Yeah, absolutely.
So then how do you rule out pareidolia as the explanation?
By measuring the outcome. And
okay.
So like the same way that you would determine whether a computer code works or doesn't work, you would run the code, and if it works, it works. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And so in one instance, it is coding for a function. And in the other instance, it's not coding for a function. And so that's the difference between like saying that it's just something that we are imposing with our human minds versus something that's actually being applied in the real world.
So testable.
Most DNA doesn't code for anything.
Well, it does.
There's a particular percentage.
Yeah,
I think it's something like
code for
80% of DNA doesn't code for anything. So to call DNA itself a code is just wrong.
I think that number is overinflated, and we can go down that rabbit hole at some point because that's a very deep rabbit hole. But the idea that all of our, or at least a vast majority of our DNA doesn't do anything is kind of being disproven.
That's slightly different.
No,
saying
I'm sorry,
coded.
It just isn't.
No, it's not. That's the whole point. Is that if it is coding for a function, it's coding for a function, and if it's not coding for a function, it's not coding for a function. So
most
that's
DNA
the simple distinction
doesn't generate a function,
and that's what I'm telling you.
It may have functions, like it may have a structural function,
right?
But it doesn't mean that it's same as coding for like a gene.
Well,
right.
It is
what I'm hearing you talk about, Terry, and now this is, I think, a little bit more of a philosophical rather than scientific approach. So if it's not useful for the conversation, I apologize. But it seems like what we're having a difficulty here is the is-ought problem. These things, this is a reaction, and it yielded this outcome. Therefore, it ought to be intelligently designed. Now, maybe that's.
Let me just stop this discussion here because I think we're straying from the original topic.
Yeah. Okay.
This is something I think we can get back to at like a different session, but let's stick with the Big Bang because so just to remind everyone, the whole point is that Big Bang theory itself doesn't indicate that there was a beginning of the universe, and it doesn't, somehow support Genesis as kind of the beginning of everything.
Like even if we go along and say, look, let's grant that the Big Bang is the beginning of this universe. It was, let's say there was a T0. It is the beginning of this. That still doesn't support Genesis. It just doesn't. Nothing in Genesis remotely lines up with Big Bang theory. It's all over the place. Genesis is a creation story, which is a sunrise. Essentially, it's a story of the first sunrise. That's it. It's been cooked up a little bit more and added to God. Every culture on the planet basically has some explanation for where everything came from. And that's just another one of those. So essentially, we're cooking an enormous amount of. You have to metaphor the living crap out of Genesis to get it to line up with anything remotely similar to the universe. And the Bible itself is completely oblivious to the existence of the universe or stars. It has no idea what planets are. It has no idea what the moon is. It has no idea what the sun is. It has no idea that the Earth is round. it just doesn't fit any of the cosmology. You just have to metaphor everything to try and make it go away and make it sound like it knew something.
Well, with respect, none of the claims that you just made about the text of the Bible are accurate, and I'll get to those in a second. But I do want to, again, reorient us towards the original claim, because my original claim was never even a theological claim that the Big Bang somehow supports Genesis. My original claim and gripe was with your first statement that the Big Bang Theory, quote, says nothing about the universe having a beginning. And that is not true. Like, even if you want to try and appeal to like a cyclic universe and stuff like that, stuff that hasn't been proven and is purely theoretical, you still have to acknowledge that time and space came into existence as predicted by the Big Bang Theory at time equals 0. So
I
if
don't
you
think so.
well, you can say you don't agree with space and time coming into existence at t equals 0, but that is what the Big Bang model predicts.
Big Bang
Big
model
Bang
doesn't
model
include t equals
does.
0.
We
That's the
know
problem.
that the Big
It
Bang
does.
model is wrong. It's known to be wrong. That what you're saying there is requiring that the results of the Penrose, the Hawking-Penrose singularity theorem is correct, and it's known that it cannot be correct because of what I explained earlier. It just is not correct at the small scale. Until there is a theory of quantum gravity, what happens at that tiny point can't be explained using the tools that we currently have. You can't do that.
Right, but to say that you can't say anything about what happened at that time is wrong. I agree that we can't accurately describe every instance of what's going on at and around t equals 0. But the idea that the Big Bang model itself does not predict a finite universe is false. If you want to say that the Big Bang model is false, I'm all ears. But
what's the finite universe got to do with anything?
That if the universe is finite, it had a beginning. That's the whole point, is that infinity is a completely different concept than being finite. If you have a finite universe, you have to have a beginning point.
That just doesn't follow either for a couple of reasons.
But even if we accept t equals 0, so what?
John?
That doesn't get us to an intelligent designer.
I'm not making that point. My only point that I was making with this statement here is that your claim that the Big Bang Theory says nothing about the universe having a beginning is wrong. And if we want to all agree that the Big Bang Theory is wrong, that's fine. But the Big Bang Theory itself does describe a finite universe where space and time came into existence at t equals 0.
No.
That's the pop sci version of it. The once you dig a little bit deeper, it just stops having an opinion at the point where it's known for the mathematics to fail. Yes, it's like, as I said, let's grant that it's correct. It still doesn't it doesn't get you there. But yeah, again, it's this pop sci problem that it's easy to say that. We can say that the instantiation of the universe, the stuff we look at today, did begin approximately at t equals 0 when it began to expand. But we can't say anything about what was there before that happened, whether the word before even means anything, and whether there was any, what time looks like. A good way of looking at that is if you look at the time reversal of a black hole. The Big Bang looks an awful lot like a time-reversed black hole. So you could argue potentially that what we're looking at from the Big Bang is just a black hole coming into existence and stuff coming out the other side of it. So it doesn't tell us. So that's one possible
it does,
solution.
because, if you notice, when you say stuff like that, you have to appeal to other theories and stuff that is outside of the Big Bang model. The Big Bang model doesn't
describe
You're
that
right.
moment.
You're correct. And so according to the Big Bang model, the universe began to exist at t equals 0. Space and time itself came into existence at t equals 0.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Psi version
No.
does.
No.
No,
That's it.
if
The
Okay.
if you
Psi
think
version
that,
does.
then you think that physicists like Sean Carroll are promoting this sci-fi version of the Big Bang model. Then, because
Psi.
I will quote him when he writes in
Okay.
his book From Eternity to Here. He says, and I quote: "The Big Bang is not an event that happened at a particular place in a pre-existing space, comma. It is the beginning of space and time themselves." End quote.
Okay, maybe I'm confused on what. Maybe we need to come to an understanding of what we mean when we're talking about the beginning of time, because time as I understand it, and again, a very surface level understanding of time, that it's kind of a concept that we don't necessarily have a hard grasp on, and on the quark level, isn't there even disagreement on whether or not time exists?
Not really. And I do kind of want to clear that we do have a very good understanding of time, is thanks to Einstein. But
Well,
you're
relatively.
correct
No,
that we don't.
but that's the point. Einstein's gravity, general relativity, does falls apart at t equals 0.
So
But can I just
Correct.
ask? So Terry, you quoted Sean Carroll. So can you repeat that again? What he says? So you're saying, you claim that Sean Carroll is arguing that Big Bang is the starter, beginning of time.
Yes, he literally explicitly says it in his book on the subject. I'll
Can you
find
give
the
the
quote
quote
for you
again?
again. Yeah.
and I'm not being pedantic. I really am curious as to what is meant by time in this context.
What? So, on that note, I'll address that by answering a further question that was kind of posed earlier. That when we say like the universe as we know it, you said that like saying the universe as we know it doesn't make sense because the universe right now isn't the same as it was 380,000 years after the Big Bang or whatever. And
Right.
that's not what it's about. I agree that the terminology is a little bit vague, but in physics, when we say the universe as we know it, we mean like we basically mean the laws of physics as we know them, like the space-time continuum and the physical laws that emerge from the Big Bang. So that's kind of the whole point, is that it is. I agree that definitionally it is a little bit circular, but it is what it is. Like the Big Bang model does predict
Another
that the
tautology.
universe as we know it came into existence at t equals 0, and that includes, like I said, the space-time continuum and all of the physical laws that emerged at the same time. And so, like, I agree that if you want to make another claim that, okay, the Big Bang model on this specific point is wrong, that's a different claim than saying that the Big Bang model does not say this, because it does. And the vast majority of scientists, cosmologists, and physicists agree that it also does as well.
Again, we get this
That's untrue.
problem. We get this problem of so, for example, you're quoting Sean Carroll's book. Now, that's a book that is specifically pop sci. That's its purpose, is to talk to people in a way that's easy to understand, without having to dive deeply into all of the mathematics and all the rest of it, which I'll have to admit, without worry, is well beyond my physics knowledge as well. He's clearly better at this than I am.
Well, so if that's your complaint with the source, then
what I'm
I can
saying,
pull up a
no.
Hawking, Stephen Hawking lecture where he says the exact same thing in a
What I'm
university
trying to
lecture. So
sorry, what I'm trying to say is that it's always, and I said this earlier, whenever you're looking at something in physics, it's always complicated. If you say one thing is 100% true, then you're probably not getting it right. So you can sort of look at it from one way. So you can definitely look at it one way and say, hey, that's the beginning of how we view the world, but it doesn't necessarily say it's the beginning of all things in any way. It's the begin. It may be the beginning of this universe as we this component, but it doesn't say anything about, as I said before, it says nothing about what that point was, how it came to exist, or whether there was a cosmos before, and essentially it's just budding off universes as black holes come into existence.
Right, but
it says
again,
nothing about
notice
those things.
you're appealing to stuff that's outside of the Big Bang model, because the Big Bang model
you're
itself
appealing to
cannot probe that deep into the singularity. That's
Yes,
the
but
whole
you're
point. Is that
appealing to a Big
because
Bang model that is incomplete. So
no, I'm
saying,
appealing to the mainstream scientific consensus Big Bang model. That's
No, you're
all
not.
I'm saying, is that
You're
the
appealing to
mainstream
the popular opinion of the
No.
Big Bang theory.
No, like I said, I can quote physicists in
Yeah.
university lectures that tell you the exact statement that space and time came into existence at t equals 0.
yes,
And
But
and
that's
so
not the Big Bang
if-
model.
oh, yes,
that-
it is. That is the
No,
whole
no.
point.
The
Is that if
Big
you
Bang
want to,
model is the
if you-
expansion of the current universe.
from t equals 0.
No. Not from t equals 0.
Yes, from
T equals 0 is an extrapolation from that theory. It's not in the theory
No,
itself.
it is. It is.
It's a
in the Big
later
Bang model.
extrapolation.
No, the
Okay.
That's what
modern
Blarg
Big
is
Bang
trying to
model
point
that is
out to
accepted
you.
by the vast majority of scientists does
No,
include
no,
a
no,
description that
you-
says that the universe, as we know it, was
No.
Okay,
came
hold
into
on.
existence.
Hold on.
at t
Hold on.
equals 0.
We're starting to talk over each other. Terry.
Yes.
Okay. When was the Big Bang Theory first published, discussed? When did it first come up?
Slipping me off the top of my head. I'm not sure
Sure,
why
yeah,
that's relevant.
like the 50s or 60s,
Well, no,
but it's
no,
not really.
'cause
It's not really
I am going
relevant,
somewhere with
John.
this. What's that?
It's 50s or 60s or something. It's not.
50s or
It's
60s.
not
Yeah,
that,
somewhere in
it's
that
not
time
that
frame.
relevant.
Right,
I've got to
and
say.
I am going somewhere with this question. At that time, when it was first released, was the concept of t equals 0 a part of the first publication of the concept of the Big Bang Theory?
It doesn't matter, John. Honestly, it's a little bit
Yes,
like
it
asking about
But yeah,
about
he's right.
Darwinian evolution. You know, talking about Darwin, it doesn't matter what it looked like in the past. It only sort of matters where we are at the minute. So,
Sure.
Well,
I
I agree with that statement, but he is correct that they did include that as a part of the initial theory, because the whole point of the Big Bang theory was to overturn the current model of the time, which was that the universe was static and eternal. And
Yeah.
so we started to discover all this evidence that the universe was expanding, and like redshift and the Hubble's constant and all these things, and the CMB and all that. So we started to come up with theories and models to predict, if the universe is expanding now, what happens as we wind time back all the way. And yeah, so it was a part of the original theory. And to his point, I agree with Blarg that it doesn't really matter, because that is a part of the original theory, but what matters is right now. But right now, the current consensus is that the Big Bang model describes that the universe, space, and time came into existence at t equals 0. And that's not just like the pop sci, or like, just the colloquial term of the Big Bang. That is how it's mathematically described. And
Yes,
the
but the
work that
mathematics
Hawking
is-
and Penrose did later on only further proved that. It didn't disprove that.
except theirs is a solution to. So
Right.
Penrose
To general
did
relativity.
it's a solution to general relativity, which is known not to apply at the small scale. So it cannot tell you what. So you cannot use that theory to tell you about t equals 0, because essentially you're trying to describe a divide by 0 error in that equation. We know that it doesn't work, but look, the reality is it's a question about who's how you want to look at the definition. Yes, I'm happy with a definition which says that our universe, as we understand it, began 13.8 billion years ago. The thing that was there that it began from doesn't look anything like our universe. So there's a clear separation between that thing and what we are. So yeah, that's a fine way of describing it, but it also doesn't tell us that is the first instant of everything.
Right. I think we're talking past each other right now, to be honest, because I don't disagree with hardly anything you said, but none of that takes away from the fact that the Big Bang model that is based on general relativity does predict t equals 0. And we can agree that it might not be accurate because we know that general relativity breaks down at those scales, but it is what the Big Bang model predicts. And
no, it's a simpler version of it. Where you can just say, well, if we just use this, we end up with a t equals 0 in there. Like, you can go along and say, I'm also happy to say that you can track it back to t. Say, yes, the Big Bang theory begins at t equals 0, but at the moment we don't have anything to say about that time between t equals 0 and t equals Planck. Because we don't have the mathematics to describe it.
Right,
I'm fine with that
agree.
as well.
Yeah, I think we're talking past each other with that, because my point isn't that we have more evidence now, right? That's different than what the Big Bang model has been predicting. But the standard Big Bang model does predict and treats the Big Bang as the universe's beginning, as in space and time came into existence there.
Well,
but Terry, but my point was that, yeah, you can take the Big Bang to t equals 0 if you assume classical physics doesn't break down and you get t equals 0, but it's not t equals 0, it's t equals undefined. Because it doesn't make sense. T equals 0 makes no sense, even within classical physics.
I think
classical physics doesn't tell you at the singularity of a black hole that what t equals 0 is. It's an undefined. It's a divide by 0 error.
Right. I agree that we still can't, perfectly characterize what the singularity was, because when we plug it into general relativity,
we can't characterize it whatsoever. That's the point.
I think that's incorrect. We can roughly characterize what the universe was like prior to the points where we have visible light, and extrapolate back to what the universe could and did look like based on relativity. And if you do it based on relativity, that's what it predicts. And that's the whole point, is that we agree that relativity probably breaks down and it's probably wrong. But that is what the model says.
It's not
probably. It's absolutely known to be incorrect at that point. It's like trying to use Newton's gravity to explain what happens as you fall into a black hole. It just doesn't work.
Right. I don't think, again, we're talking past each other, because that doesn't take away from the fact that the singularity is, as the role of the starting point of the universe, is a core feature of the Big Bang model. Like, that is part of what the Big Bang model predicts, is that at some point the universe was infinitely dense at t equals 0.
Yeah,
and that's why
anywhere you get an infinity, you have a problem in your math. That was what I was saying earlier. So,
okay, we can agree that it's wrong then. Okay, wrong. Right. Okay, so we agree that it's wrong, but that is what the Big Bang model predicts. If you want to say that it is wrong because we know that general relativity doesn't work at that scale, fine. But that means that the Big Bang theory is wrong, because it does predict that, because it's based on general relativity.
No.
It means that the simplistic view that only uses general relativity is wrong. And if you want to be slightly more precise about it, then it's a little bit like saying that Newton's gravity is wrong. But it isn't. It's perfectly useful for a lot of things. You can navigate your way to the moon using Newtonian gravity. You can do all sorts of fun things with it. But trying to use it to describe places where it's out, you're just doing you're using the wrong mathematics to describe it. So anywhere where you've got a physical law in the universe, essentially you've got a scope where that law applies, and a scope where they're all approximations. General relativity is an approximation of what is happening, and there's something deeper, some deeper understanding there that we may get to with quantum gravity, which would better describe it. Like, you can get Newtonian gravity out of quantum gravity by just setting some the speed is zero basically, and the curvature of space time is zero,
Again,
and it'll
think
fall
we're
it'll fall
past
out.
each other a little bit again, because
Yeah.
I don't disagree with the fact that we cannot use general relativity to probe those scales or any of those things, but that doesn't take away from the fact that, as far as we can tell, based on the Big Bang model, that the Big Bang model was the onset of space-time. Like, it came into existence there based on the model. And if we want to say that the model is wrong, that's fine, and I will agree. But, like, again, we're talking past each other. Is that it's like, we can't use general relativity to probe that scale. So if we just want to say that the Big Bang is wrong, sure, let's say the Big Bang is wrong.
From the point that the expansion began, we can. I'm happy to go ahead, and that's all fine. We just don't. We can't say anything much about that other point. You can't say that it tells us that's when the universe began.
But here's what the fundamental point is, though, is that we can say more about all the events after and leading up to t equals 0 that we cannot say anything for before then. The whole point is that t equals 0 marks the first point where we're able to describe anything in the universe whatsoever.
No, we can't describe anything about that because we don't know. We don't know how big the universe was at that time. We don't know how hot it was. We don't know how dense it was.
We can inaccurately plug those things into general relativity, and it gives us infinity signs, and that's where the singularity comes from. But that is the whole notion of where t equals 0 comes from, is that before that time, we can't do any science. But after that time, we can. And so there's a huge distinction between those
anything at that point either. We can't do anything at t equals 0.
Yeah, we can. That's the whole point. Like,
that's where you get the infinity.
You literally admitted you get infinities.
There is an infinity there.
At time equals 0, but after time equals 0, we can absolutely do plenty of physics. Hell, at 380,000 years after the Big Bang, light is visible.
Great physics.
So that's
after
not
t equals 0.
That is after time equals 0.
But you're trying to say that t equals 0, we know what was there. We can extrapolate back to it. You can't.
No, I'm not saying that we know what is there. I'm saying that we know that there was something there, and that our math does not accurately describe it. And that before that time period of t equals 0, if you even want to call it a time period, because it doesn't make sense, but there's nothing before then. Like, the notion of before t equals 0 just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but that's also
t equals 0 doesn't make sense. That's the point.
See.
Well, you can say that, but in the physics context,
no.
Seriously,
listen.
What general relativity predicts.
Please listen. T equals 0 doesn't make sense. That is the point we're trying to make.
Yeah, that you can't say anything about t equals 0 because that's when the all the mathematics we have currently to describe it are wrong, and you go through an infinity. Anywhere you've got an infinity, you've got a problem. You've got the same thing happens when you look at the Penrose diagrams of for example, our universe. Running into a black hole, you've got divide by zeros,
right? And so if you go based purely on general relativity using a Penrose diagram for a black hole, what does it predict is at the singularity of a black hole?
The next universe.
No, it predicts that time ends,
and the next universe begins
equals 0.
Yeah,
and so
the
if
next
you
universe
want to,
begins.
No,
sorry, but
not necessarily, because
continue on. They do.
We have no confirmation of that part of the theory. That's the whole point.
Well,
is that we only have confirmation.
Now you're doing it. Now you're having it both ways. So you're saying we're using general relativity and we're going to put it on a Penrose diagram. When you put it on a Penrose diagram, you get another universe at the other side of the black hole. That's what happens at a Penrose.
All right.
A Penrose diagram.
But what happens at the singularity? Time equals 0. Time ends, and then time runs in reverse in the new universe.
No, time begins in the new universe, not in reverse. It begins in the new universe. A black hole looking at it from our side looks exactly like a white hole looking out the other side. So
a white hole, as predicted by Penrose diagrams and general relativity, time runs backwards. That's why they spit stuff out instead
no,
of suck stuff in, quote unquote.
no.
That is
A
what
white
it
hole
predicts.
looks like a time reversed black hole. It isn't a time reversed black hole. So the mathematics of a white hole are the same as what you'd get if you reversed the time of a black hole. But when you put it on a Penrose diagram, essentially it's saying that everything came down to an infinitesimal zero point, and the next universe begins at that point.
But what you just said, by admitting that, is that it still makes sense for that to be a prediction of general relativity. Right?
Yeah, but if you're going to go and say that there is nothing before, hold up. If you're going to say that it can't get you to before the black hole, then the Penrose diagrams and general relativity do get you to before the black hole, before the singularity. They definitely do. I'm sorry,
because
but
the singularity at the beginning of the universe, when described in a Penrose diagram, isn't described in the same way as a black hole when it's described in a Penrose diagram. Because you're right that in a black hole, you kind of form what's it called, an Einstein-Rosen bridge, which is basically supposed to be some sort of travel point between the two universes, and you don't get that with the beginning of the universe singularity. You only get that time equals zero because everything becomes infinitely dense and all world lines converge at one point.
Yes, and all world lines begin at the next white hole and then end
not at the beginning of the universe. That's the whole point is that I'm trying to make, is that if you want to make the claim that the Penrose diagrams are accurate in describing a black hole, then you have to admit that it is accurate for. No, I am telling you that if you're using general relativity, those are the predictions that you get from those diagrams. And we can agree or disagree on whether they're accurate or not, but that is what they predict.
Let me just take
time becomes it on the Penrose diagram. Time literally ends. It goes to zero.
You're trying to use a set of mathematics which is known to be incorrect at those small scales, and say that there's nothing before, nothing after. That these are things that are predicted by that. But then when you go and say, okay, well let's do that, let's follow that, you do get the Hawking Penrose singularity theorem is the white hole in a Penrose diagram. It's the point at which all world lines converge, and what's on the other side, world lines come back out of there in exactly the same way as if it's infalling matter from another universe into a black hole singularity.
But you're equivocating that to their description of the singularity at the beginning of the universe, in which they do not have an Einstein-Rosen bridge in the middle that is going to a white hole. That's the whole point, is that I agree that you're right, that for black holes, the Hawking Penrose diagram and theory does predict what you just described. But it doesn't predict the same thing for the beginning of the universe, mainly because our universe is expanding. And that was the biggest reason why they had to deal with it differently, is because a black hole is not in the same state of expansion as the universe as we know it. And so you have to account for that in your equations. And basically, like, the whole point that, again, I forgive me if it's a bad way of saying it, but it seems like you're trying to avoid it, is that, like, we can agree, if you want, that whatever general relativity predicts for black holes and, any singularity of any kind is wrong because we know it breaks down at that scale. Fine, I'm all in your camp. We're 100% in agreement. But that means that we need to abandon the Big Bang model that is accepted by currently the consensus of scientists, because it predicts the same thing based on those Penrose diagrams. Like, we may know that those Penrose diagrams are wrong, but that is what the model predicts. And so,
Dude,
like I
really,
said,
you're going to
huh,
learn some things as you do your degree about this sort of way of looking at the world that you have a lot to learn yet. I'm sorry, but this is it's just wrong. That's not how science works. We know there's a problem at that point. The Penrose diagrams, the general relativity do a great job of describing almost everything except where things get really squidgy in the middle there. And we know that's all fine, and it gives us great tools to work with for almost everything. But trying to squeeze it all in to try and make it sound like there's more there, it just isn't.
I mean, I
What
think
you're
my objection to what you're saying, Terry, is that you're saying that because t equals 0 is wrong, and we know it's wrong in the Big Bang, that we are saying that the Big Bang theory is wrong. We're saying that the Big Bang theory is right as much as it's verified, but at t equals 0, it just doesn't apply.
and what
Terry.
I'm trying to get you to see is that the Big Bang model, as accepted by the consensus of physicists and cosmologists, does indeed describe t equals 0 as the beginning point of the universe. Whether it's 100% fully understood or not, that's way up for debate because we can't probe it yet.
I
But
think that's the
the
trivia
model
point.
that we use,
And I would say that you're assuming something about the consensus of physics that you're wrong about.
I mean, you say that, but it's not something I'm wrong about. My simple 5-second
This
Google
whole problem
search
that you have
earlier in the
with declaring that
conversation
you're right
proves the
without
point.
showing that you're right.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to show a Penrose diagram for those people who don't.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Can you let that?
That would
come
help
up
me because I
quickly?
don't understand.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
If people could show 'em. Yeah. Here we go.
Popped up there. So I've got some here that are quite useful. What's this? Colorado DU. Okay, I don't know if this gives us. So here's a simple here a spot in the universe, something falling through the event horizon into a black hole hits the singularity at the radius equals 0. That's a simple Penrose diagram. So time travels forward. The 45 degrees is essentially the speed of light. So something traveling at speed can only travel. Something traveling at the speed of light can travel at this in its world line. So essentially, what we've got in a Penrose diagram is space is in this direction. Time is, well, one dimension of space is horizontal, and the time is going forward. So essentially, something falling into it goes there. Now, if we go back, that can be expanded out to a larger one, so you can have parallel universes. This is essentially a what's meant by a sort of a white hole is essentially the same thing as a black hole, but in reverse. So something falling into the black hole, something in a white hole has to fall out of it. Does that make sense? With the so if we've got this a particle located here at radius equals 0 in a white hole, which is essentially what we're looking at for the singularity, is when the universe has a radius of 0. So that there is the singularity in the Big Bang model using only general relativity. So it'll then have to fall out of the black hole and into the universe. And if you have a look, you can have a much more complicated thing where you're passing essentially through a black hole, into a white hole, into a new universe, into a black hole, into a white hole. Yeah, that's probably, maybe not how things are going to work, but depending upon what happens at the point where you hit that singularity, and these are wormhole sort of things, so they're a bit off to the side. But this is what you get out of general relativity if you want to just say, okay, it's fine, we're going to use that and ignore the divide by 0 errors that occur at the universe. You just run straight through the black hole and out the white hole at the other side. And you come to a point of zero as you do it. So, yeah, does that make sense? So that's what a Penrose diagram looks like, for those who've never seen one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely helpful to see one if you've
And
never seen
worth
one before.
noting that at no point does the blue line go backwards.
It cannot travel backwards. No, it needed
Yeah.
Right.
time. So in this case, yeah, there is no reversal of time in this thing. A white hole is still going in the same direction as a black hole.
Well,
It's just
because
traveling into a new universe.
in this theory, the time reversal is local. It's not universal, and so that's why the line never reverses. But if you were in every one of those individual universes, you would notice changes in the laws of physics and time. And it's just because
I'm not quite sure where you're digging that up from.
well, it's kind of an implicit thing that's implied with the theory, and I don't even truly understand it entirely, to be honest. But
no, this is just you're traveling forward. Essentially, it's just saying that the inside of a black hole is the outside of. As you pass into a black hole, you're passing out into the next universe. You just keep going from one into the next universe. So the formation of a black hole is essentially the formation of a new universe.
right,
And
but
there is some evidence that this is true, because if you want to argue that the universe is fine-tuned for anything, it's fine-tuned for the creation of black holes. It's very good at doing that.
It's very good at creating black holes. Yeah.
So under this formation, under this arrangement, essentially every time a black hole is created, a new universe is created inside that black hole. And for shits and giggles, the size of the event horizon for a universe, for a black hole, the weight of our universe is exactly the same size as our universe.
Right, like the mass content and energy content. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
it is a solid. So if you want to just use this theory, you essentially have some information about what happened before it. So you can't go along and say, yes, we've got we're using general relativity, and it stops at the so we can't go back. You either have one or the other. So if we're going to go full in on general relativity, this is what we get. If you want to acknowledge the fact that stuff happens when things get very small, then we have to acknowledge that we don't really know what actually happened at that point. It could be, for all I know, that it could be that nothing existed before that, and something began it. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on that. Maybe it was God.
Well, I think again we're kind of talking past each other here, because I don't disagree with hardly anything that you've said, but you're still kind of trying to gloss over the fact that even in those Penrose diagrams, it still deals with the fact that R and T both equal 0 at some point, which means that T equals 0 is not some weird concept that only appears at the singularity of the universe. And at the same time, kind of my further point is that if we are going to trust those models for black holes, that means we also need to trust the similar models for the beginning of the universe, in which it cannot be that way.
Yeah, I'm not trusting them. That's it. That's the point I'm saying, is that it's not worth trusting.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. We agree.
If we want to trust them, then we inevitably get previous universes, and we get future universes that just keep budding infinitely from that space-time diagram.
Right.
And
it's
just
like
another
black holes all the way down.
Yeah, and
just
never
for another
something for
nothing.
fun,
It should be pointing out.
and just for another fun piece of evidence towards some potential truth in that is you also made a point about the second law of thermodynamics. We're starting from a low entropy state.
Mm-hmm.
Black hole event horizons act as a filter for entropy. Entropy piles up on the surface of a black hole.
Yeah,
and
I
does
have
not
heard that
follow
theory.
into it.
But the thing that I encountered, that the main objection to those theories, at least from other like scientists that I've read, is just that in the math, you still have to deal with the fact that every time the universe does that kind of cycle, it still loses some of its entropy. And so eventually it would get to a state in where it's very, very high entropy everywhere, and chemistry and stuff can't happen. And so far they haven't really found a model that'll account for that part of the entropy problem.
Oh, there's
But
plenty of explanations for that as well. So ones, for example, like entropy doesn't have a maximum range. So essentially, you start from a point, you get to a point that, there's no upper limit on entropy. Is one solution to that?
well, no,
that
you're
question.
right, but we have to deal with the fact that our universe right now still has relatively low entropy compared to a universe that, if it were infinitely recurring, bouncing off of itself over and over and over again, eventually that would get to a point where it's so high entropy that it would not be an accurate model for this universe. And
But
that's
what does
the
low
problem.
entropy mean? So
It means like condensed energy in usable forms, not spread out. And it's a very vague concept, but it's very easy to see it once you know it.
Yeah, I think sorry, Terry, but I think basically the main problem with where you are at the moment is because of you are relatively new. Look, let me just say before I say that, when I did my physics degree, one of the guys I did the degree with, and the guy who got by far the best marks of any of us, was a hardcore Christian, and he is now a priest with a doctorate in theology. So, so yes, physics doesn't make you into an atheist, and I'm not trying to say that it does, but essentially in a lot of ways it feels a lot like you're grasping onto, essentially it's confirmation bias. You're working really hard to grab hold of things that support your worldview rather than just letting the data take you along. And
I think that's
really wish you
very misplaced.
the
Not
best.
gonna lie, I don't want to be disrespectful or anything, but that's extremely misplaced, because most of this time I've only been making the contention that I am just making a gripe with his initial statement that the Big Bang doesn't say anything about the universe having a beginning. I never even made a theological point about, like trying to say that the Big Bang supports the Bible or anything like that. I was only trying to correct his statement there that says that it doesn't say anything regarding the beginning of the universe, which is which is not true.
Look, I think we've probably cooked that goose to death. I'll say this. In some ways, it says nothing about the universe. In some ways, it says heaps about the beginning of the universe, the Big Bang, and physics is complicated. So
we can agree. Yeah, that's definitely an apt statement. Yeah.
We're happy with it. I think I'm happy with that. You're happy with that. What about the rest of the panel? It's complicated is the correct answer.
I'm a chemist. It's
Yeah.
complicated is kind of the joys of chemistry.
It's an understatement.
Yeah.
I mean, I found this fascinating. I do apologize if my questions weren't very well.
Oh no, I thought your questions were great.
Okay. Well, thank you. You're being very kind.
Oh, no.
Most of the time when I get into arguments about entropy, most of my arguments about it just fall apart.
It happens to everyone.
You missed it. It was another one of John's god awful puns.
Most of my jokes, most of my arguments.
I get it.
John only speaks in pun.
That flew right over
my head. He doesn't know English.
That was more like
got over a year of experience with you.
It was just 2/3 of a pun. It was just PU.
Oh my god!
No, I found it fascinating, and even genuinely hearing coming at this from the different perspectives, especially with regards to sort of what does t = 0 mean, and how do we then use that to further the understanding of the underlying nature of the universe? Because I think that both philosophically but also scientifically is a fascinating topic. And I really appreciate where you're coming from, Terry. I think that there are some sort of core concepts that perhaps if I knew more about cosmology, more about physics, that I might be able to further understand. Again, sort of like without getting into the philosophies of it, sort of what is meant by time. Because again, my understanding of it is that as you get closer to the speed of light, time slows down for the observer as they get faster. And so when you're talking about these relativistic speeds, that I think that's where I was kind of trying to go with on my question about on the subatomic level, on the quark level, does time even exist? Because at that level, everything is moving at relativistic speeds, and so how can time exist? Yeah,
it's kind of a question that's still ongoing in physics because we don't really know for sure, and I'm probably going to piss Blarg off by saying this, but
what else is new?
But
you've been doing that for an hour and a half, man. Move on.
Yeah, you're running them there for a moment.
No, but we don't really know whether time is emergent or if it's like a fundamental property of the universe. We suspect that it's just emergent right now, and so if it is emergent, then you are actually kind of correct that like what causes time is things happening in the universe, and so that causes time as like an emergent property to exist, whereas like if it's like a literal thing, then it's like an actual dimension to our universe, which is kind of more of the Einsteinian space-time realm. And so that's where you get the two differing views of, you've got the quantum mechanical view, which is that time is an emergent property because, you don't observe it at the quantum scale. And once, stuff happens in the universe, that is when time actually matters. And then you've got the general relativity side, which says that no, because we use this model for an accurate prediction of space-time, that means that it's somehow a physical fundamental property of the universe. And yeah, I don't know where I sit on it, to be honest, but like it's an open debate. Like you can, at the moment, I think you can pick either side, and there's plenty of evidence to justify your decision, but it's still an open question.
Well, geometrically, time acts like a weird version of spatial dimensions,
right? But only on larger scales, and so that's the issue.
At lower scales, space has exactly the same problem.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just time; it's the whole of space-time is a problem at the microscopic scale.
Oh yeah, no,
which is where the t=0 thing,
Well, it's a fundamental incompatibility between quantum mechanics and general relativity is really what it is. If we had some way to mend the two, we would have at least some way to describe what's going on at those scales.
And I bet you some creationists will jump on it and say, "Oh, this claims God."
Yeah, but that's precisely the reason why it doesn't make sense to say t=0, because we're looking at it as kind of like a separate dimension that's like a timeline, right? So
no, I agree with that point. It's just that like the whole reason why I kind of spurred this discussion is just because the Big Bang Theory as it's currently accepted is only based on general relativity primarily. It doesn't really account for quantum mechanics. And so that's the problem, is that we don't have a way to merge quantum mechanics into the Big Bang Theory so that we can describe things like singularities.
Right.
And so
that's why the consensus is that at t=0 it doesn't apply.
The consensus is we don't know. Yeah.
Right. I think physicists know that it doesn't apply at t=0.
Well, the whole point is that the consensus is more of like, we know that the universe as we know it began at that time, but we have no way of describing it, and we have no way of knowing where that came from itself. And so, like, we can't probe past the Planck time.
I don't
think if we could, we would know.
You are saying that at t=0, all this energy just popped into existence.
No. That's not what I'm saying at all.
But it could have. That's the thing.
It could have. Yeah, you're right. It could have. But that's not described in the Big Bang model. the Big Bang model doesn't describe like energy and stuff coming into existence from nothing, but it does describe it mathematically. That implies that space and time came into existence at that point.
Yeah, there is versions though where it looks like, in some ways, have you heard of the zero energy universe hypothesis?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Essentially, that's got some solid evidence for it as well, due to the fact that the universe appears to be perfectly flat. But essentially, the theory is that the all of the energy in the universe is exactly balanced by all of the essentially negative energy that is created through gravity. So gravity equals the energy of the universe, and as a result, the net energy of the universe is zero. So so essentially, the beginning of the universe was a split between energy and gravity,
right?
Where the two separated, and all the energy could then come into existence as the gravity came into existence as well.
At the same time, right?
At the same time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that theory, but if I'm not wrong, and again, I'm not as educated on that theory as I probably should be, but isn't the problem with that theory dark energy and dark matter? Like, it doesn't really account for that because we don't know really what it is. And so it kind of like vaguely says that it's
actually it's actually the opposite, because even with the with dark energy and dark matter have to exist, or otherwise the universe wouldn't be flat. So,
oh no, you're right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Isn't that the same theory that tries to describe galaxy formation the same way as well? That it kind of is like an implication of having that dark matter and stuff there. Is that galaxies were formed
I think
the
that
way?
gets a little bit more complex. But
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of a separate theory. Yeah, but still, yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So let me. We're close at time, so I'll say that. I'll say that one thing that kind of rankled me a little bit, Terry, is that when you kind of invoke that, all physicists accept that Big Bang has to equal zero and all that, and also when you mentioned Sean Carroll, I mean, I've just heard the name, but I haven't read too much about him. But just
Sean's excellent.
Yeah,
just for anyone who wants to know more about the universe not energy not being conserved, Sean Carroll is a great source for that. He discusses it terrifically.
Yeah, he's really good. Yeah.
So let me just show a little bit. This is from a Wired magazine where they're asking him, so the Big Bang starts it all, but you theorize that there's something before the Big Bang, something that makes it happen. What's that? And so he talks a little bit about it, but if you go down to it, he talks about that, about our universe being part of a bigger multiverse, and the Big Bang was not the beginning, right? So he's not saying that time began at t equals zero with the Big Bang.
Oh, no, so yeah, you're getting a little bit confused, and no offense for me saying that, but
yeah, no worries.
Because I'm not saying that there are not any valid alternative theories to the Big Bang that don't have the same problem that the Big Bang does. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, I agree. Sean Carroll has done fantastic work on the many worlds theory, which has a lot of good evidence for it, to be completely honest. But the point that I was making is that the Big Bang theory itself does predict these things. And that's why people like Sean Carroll are coming up with these other theories, is because the Big Bang theory has this problem and these ones don't. Does that make sense?
I don't 100% agree with it, but I get the point that you're trying to make.
Right. Because his main theory is basically that anytime you get a quantum entanglement where there's basically more than one outcome to any quantum system, that the world branches into two separate universes, essentially, where like one, does one decision and one does the other. It's kind of like a solution to Schrodinger's cat, basically, is how that theory started. And so that one, like I said, it does have a lot of merit behind it, and it doesn't have the same problem that the Big Bang does.
Yeah. So just to recap, in terms of the original point, right, that my contention that Big Bang doesn't explicitly talk about t equals zero because it's undefined, and you're saying that theoretically, I mean, just from mathematical point of view, it does go to t equals zero because I think your point is that you sort of have to assume a t equals zero to assume, plus Planck time and plus
Right.
380,000
I
years,
think
etc.
I think the biggest part of this disagreement comes down to the fact that we need to be a little bit more careful with our words, to be honest, because I agree with the statement that you just made. It's just that's not the same claim that you made in the original post. You claimed that it didn't say anything about the origin of the universe at all, basically. And that's not true. Like, I agree that we can't fully describe t equals zero, and we think that it might be wrong. But to say that it doesn't say anything about whether the universe had a beginning or not is not true.
I would be curious to see how this conversation sort of evolves, ironically, over time. But seems like that might take another couple of hours for us to expand upon fully.
Yeah.
Maybe.
At the
Well,
very least.
I just wanted to just
We can put
reiterate.
a pin on it.
What I said was that what the Big Bang says, that only what it is really there to say is that the universe began to expand at that point, not that it came into existence at t equals zero. I don't think the Big Bang says that. Maybe you can say that it implies, or it has to have that implication, but it doesn't. It's a starting point that it has to assume, like an axiom, right?
Essentially,
That's not included.
it just depends upon how pedantic you are being about your language in a lot of ways. So, does it say nothing?
So if you mean,
as always, physics is complicated, and maybe it's just best left at that.
Well, I can definitely agree with that last statement there, that it's definitely left up to an opinion when you say something as vague as you did, that someone can look at that and go, one way or the complete opposite way. And the point is that, we need to be a little bit more clear when we're making our claims. Because if you had said the Big Bang Theory doesn't explicitly say that the universe came into being from nothing, and then said it only says that the universe began to expand, then I wouldn't have probably even replied to you. But you did indeed say that it says nothing about the universe having a beginning, which is not true. Even if you want to make the semantic point that it doesn't explicitly say, the universe was, created at t equals zero, the implication even of the theory is that it did have a finite beginning.
Okay, then let's touch on what we kind of said we are going to touch on at the beginning. So, do you think that the Big Bang Theory supports Genesis 1:1, that the universe began to exist?
I'm happy to discuss this, but I still don't know what it has to do with the original claim.
Well, the original claim was that the Big Bang Theory saying, because a lot of Christians say, the Big Bang Theory is accepted by all physicists, and it says that the universe had a beginning, and therefore Genesis 1:1 is correct. That's where, whenever Big Bang Theory gets brought up by creationists or by Christians, that's where they're going, right? They're not
I
talking
do
about
agree that that is a
cosmology.
very common talking point by apologists that don't have a very good education. But among most educated creationists, that isn't really a common argument. And again, that wasn't the argument I was making either. And I think I also don't think that was the argument that Lee Strobel was even making either to begin with.
It's definitely
Because
the argument Lee Strobel's making. It's always the
no,
argument he's making.
No, he's not, because he's just in fact, even in that post, which we can't access anymore for some reason, the post was just about seeing distant starlight, and that is an evidence of itself for a finite universe. And that's all he was saying and using as an argument. And whether or not I
Argument
agree
for
with
Genesis
that,
1:1, right?
Yes, I agree that that is the argument he was making with that very specific evidence. But he didn't say anything about the Big Bang model, because most creationists don't believe in the Big Bang model. Because the Big Bang model explicitly ties into it a 13.8 billion year age to the universe, which
Yeah,
most
that's only
creationists don't agree with. And
most
so-
creationists aren't young Earth creationists. See, that's
Yeah,
the thing.
that's
Most Christians are creationists of a kind, which is to say they believe the universe was created.
I agree.
But
You're not
young
wrong.
Earth creationists are a whole other group.
There are a lot
and
of
I'm not saying Lee
creationists,
Strobel's
you're
a
right.
member of that.
But that is kind of the point, though, is that Lee Strobel is a young Earth creationist. He's not just a creationist, and that's the point. And when we're talking about young Earth creationists, I agree. Like, to be honest, you don't see a whole bunch of like old Earth creationists that are educated anyway making that argument. You see a bunch of them that have no idea what the Big Bang model is, arguing that it supports Genesis, but I don't agree with that at all, and that wasn't the point that I was making. So,
Well, a young Earth creationist can't look through a telescope, look hundreds of millions of light years out, and claim a 6,000-year-old universe.
I mean, that's just an inaccurate statement from the outset, but...
Well, it means that what you have to assume is that God went along and created a fictitious history to the universe outside the a bubble of space-time 6,000 years around 6,000 light years in radius.
No,
the
not
rest
at all.
of the universe, it has to be, because we can see things occurring that had to have occurred more than 6,000 years ago. So therefore, if we're looking at an event that appears to have occurred 6 million years ago, for example, because
right,
it's
it
6 million
appears
light
to
years
have
away,
appeared that way. And
yeah,
the argument that
God
I
had to
would
have
use
created
against
a
that...
fake universe out into that distance.
No, it just means that, to be honest, with respect, you have a misunderstanding of the speed of light, because most young Earth creationists would use the argument that the speed of light is not defined. We know the round trip of speed of light, but we have no idea how long it takes light to get to us from a distant object. And we have no way to test that.
That's oh my god.
In some ways, he's sort of correct. The one-way speed of light hasn't been tested, but there is absolutely no reason to think that the one-way speed of light is any different to the two-way speed of light.
Well, so, Einstein himself also said that there is no reason to think that it's the same either. The only reason that we assume that it's the same is because Einstein came up with his Einsteinian synchronization convention.
No. If you look at it this way, what possible... There's just... Essentially, you're trying to say that the light knows which direction it's traveling, and therefore will behave in a particular...
No, it could be that there's
way.
Just like a preferred direction.
That's exactly what you're saying.
There is, no, but
it could
be
that
there can't be a preferred direction. The preferred direction is only towards Earth.
Right, but you have no way of telling me that there's not a... You can't test it. That's the whole point, is that it's completely untestable.
Essentially, but you can, because you can turn the measurement. So essentially,
all the experiments for the luminiferous ether essentially tested that.
Yeah. So if you say that there is a direction in which light travels faster, then it should mean that what we get is, on one side, we get the universe happening at a particular rate, and on the other side, we get the universe happening at a vastly different rate. Because light traveling to us is different from the two sides of Earth.
You're right.
But
if the speed of light is different, then the time dilation also depends on direction.
Yes, so the universe will be evolving at different rates, different directions.
But none of the laws of physics change. All of the laws of physics stay exactly the same as long as the round trip. No, they won't. We will always measure. We'll always measure the speed of light to be c, even if it was never traveling that speed.
No. The rate at which the universe evolves. So essentially, when we look, so what we're saying is that the light has traveled, let's say from the left, the light has traveled 13.8 billion light years in 6,000 years. So that's what we're looking at from that direction. So the universe from that side is evolving extremely fast. We should be seeing galaxies pop into existence and explode so fast in that direction, whereas in the other direction,
no. So
essentially
you're
the
getting
light
confused.
is traveling. No,
No,
the
time
light is
doesn't
traveling
change. The time that it takes for things to happen in the universe doesn't change because the speed of light
but our
changes.
observation of them. So things have to happen faster. There's a 13 billion years, or nearly 14 billion years of the evolution of the universe jammed into 6,000 years of time when we look to the left.
The fact is still that you could be seeing Mars in real time, and there is no way, there's no experiment that you can do to confirm whether you're seeing it in real time or with a time delay. There's no experiment you can do to confirm what speed the light was traveling to get to you.
Let me finish.
But you're arguing that there is.
Yeah, but you're saying that there's one direction of flow. So from the left, it's traveling faster. We might even say it's traveling instantly fast from the left, which means everything that we're looking at out to the left, there should be no CMBR out to the left. It should not have had any time for the... so all of that should be compressed into a very brief time. The light that's coming from the right is coming upstream. So essentially, just imagine yourself sit in a creek, and with the water flowing past you from left to right. You throw a pebble into the water in front of you. What's going to happen is the rate at which those bubbles go outwards are going to occur at different rates. So the one going downstream, the edge of the ring of the...
Right, what you don't understand is that all of our laws that predict that stuff based on the speed of light only do so based on the round trip speed. None of those laws.
No, that's not true.
No, stop.
That is true.
Stop.
No, I'm totally missing it.
No, you're missing the point entirely. What I'm saying is you would observe different behavior from the left to the right.
And what I'm telling you is you wouldn't. I'm telling you that you wouldn't, because none of the laws change. None of the laws of physics change, no matter what the speed of light is, as long as this round trip equals c.
No, but when we are Harry, when we are observing something,
there's no round trip.
Yeah, there's no round trip.
We're not
shining a light and waiting for it to come back.
I know. That's why you cannot measure how fast that light took to get to you. There's no experiment that you can make. There's no you cannot observe
you are arguing
going on
that the laws,
space.
basically that space-time has to change in order to match what you're trying to claim it's doing.
No, I'm saying that
the
that's
round exactly
trip
what you're
speed
trying
of
to
light
do.
Is unchanging, but it doesn't matter what the one-way
If the speed of light is unchanging,
none of the laws of
then
physics
the light
change.
coming to us from billions of light years away had to originate billions of years ago.
So here's the problem you're making. You're talking about a round trip, and if we're measuring round trips, that would be fine. So if you're going to try and measure the speed of light from here to Mars and then back again, you can't tell whether it instantly got to Mars and then took 40 minutes to come back, or whether it took 20 minutes to get to Mars and 20 minutes to get back, or whether it took 40 minutes to get to Mars and an instant to get back. That can't be done. But when we're just looking at something just coming from Mars without us sending anything to it, so we're not bouncing anything off, all we're looking at is what's happening with one direction of flow. And then off in the other direction, we've got... let's assume it's instantly coming from Mars from the left. It means light is traveling away from us infinitely fast to the right. But light coming back towards us is traveling at half the speed of light. So what we should see is a difference in the rate at which things occur between the left and the right.
No,
exactly the same as you would see. No, that is correct.
No.
So you would see
the speed at which events occur in the space do not change. It's the rate at which that we can find out about it that changes. And so the rate at like cosmic explosions and all of that.
How are you a physics student?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, but you really do need to go back and look at this some more.
No, I think you do, because I can cite Einstein's original 1905 paper that says
I'm going to apologize for bringing this up, because I mean, at this point,
let's take a breath.
Yeah.
Because we've deteriorated into you're uneducated. No, you're uneducated. No, you're uneducated, and that's not
Yeah.
going to get the conversation anywhere.
So I'm going to have to just end it here because I mean I just feel like that's a solid wall right there.
Yeah, you brought that
Yeah,
so
we're-
late.
However,
Everybody's tips on the plot.
I would if I may, QC, Terry. I've found your conversation fascinating, and either here or in the comments section, I would love to discuss this with you further.
Oh yeah, I would love to discuss this again.
Yeah, I'm better. I'm better at writing out my response than talking. So
Fair enough.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, and to just reiterate what John said, thanks for coming on. I think for the most part it was fairly civil discussion, which is always
Mostly.
what I'm looking for here.
Yeah.
I know at the end that became, I, I think
Start
it just
talking
kind
over
of
each other.
strained our credulity. But
Fair
anyway, well, before it goes too far, we'll end it here. You're welcome to come back. Just DM me if there's any other topic that you wanted to discuss. And
Yeah,
if I
sure.
butt head against you in some other thread, maybe that might be like another topic of discussion. And of course, much thanks to people on the panel. And Ook, I know you just had to sit there listen, and you were pretty active there in the comments. And it seems like there's some back and forth with Redefine Apologetics. Maybe at some point he can come on if he wants and have a discussion. It seems like it's a lot more religion oriented. But yeah, this was a very good conversation. Thank you very much. Thanks for everyone's participation. And
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, if I didn't talk that much.
That's all right.
I know we didn't have
Cool.
some of our other regulars in the comments, but this was very very interesting. So thank
Hopefully
you,
they'll
everyone,
enjoy it.
and have a nice evening. And I don't have an outro because StreamYard has completely like broken for me. So I will end it here, and everyone have a good evening or good day, depending on
all.
where you may be.
Yeah, have
All
a
right.
good
Thanks,
one,
everyone.
everybody.
Be well.
Thanks.